sticking around watching a little bit.
Good evening, and welcome to YouTube and everybody on Ustream.
I think we might be on YouTube, yes.
We are on YouTube as well, our first broadcast to YouTube as well. But yes, and welcome to everybody for our first new show, Talking Who. Elazar's brainchild, let you talk about it.
Well, yes, this is our new Those Video Guys' first ever spin-off show, which is Those Video Guys Talking Who, and it's we've got the new series of Doctor Who starting on Saturday. It's not just the UK, it's in the USA and Canada all on the same day.
Yep.
It's very exciting, day and date, which means, well, we can actually then do a talk show about each week.
About what's happened in the latest episode of Doctor Who.
Exactly, everyone's seen it, so there's no spoilers.
Has everybody's opinion as well. They've also now, on the DVD releases as well, they've kind of like tried to time them in the States at the same time as well. So we can talk about the latest episodes, the latest DVDs, the latest news, as River Song might say, the latest spoilers.
Indeed,
have a chat about it all and get your opinions in the message boards on Twitter and so forth as well. So
I'm very impressed that YouTube's working well. We've got our chat room in YouTube, as well as on Ustream. But I can't get into the chat room in Ustream. My lovely colleague Alice over there in front of us, who you can't see, she's in the chat room. So if you see Alice Maud, she'll be talking to you on our behalf in the chat room and letting us know if there's anything that you've got to say. Please do send in your comments about Elisabeth Sladen. We'll be doing a tribute later in the show to her.
Now, as we were saying with Liz, it's a time of excitement and rejoicing for fans. We've got the 6th season about to start, and then just before it starts, Elisabeth Sladen I think it's a big shock to everybody. It came out of absolutely nowhere.
Shocking. I mean, a lot of us, I was just literally on Twitter, and you see Elisabeth Sladen, I saw the story that she had died, and thought,
you think that's kind of a joke.
Someone's just doing some horrible joke. And then just as the minutes were going by, it was just like more... And then when Nicola Bryant, who played Perry, when she tweeted that she'd actually got a phone call and confirmed it was true, then your heart just sank, and it was... I'll admit it, I had a tear in my eye.
I think just about everybody of my age and age group, but then again, with the new series and the Sarah Jane adventures, I think she appealed really to a huge... more than just one generation. I mean, more than anybody.
She was the bridge between the classic series and the new series, really.
Yeah.
I mean, the new series started off with a whole new Doctor, whole new characters.
Yes.
But when they brought her into it, that's when they really tied
with K9 as well.
With K9,
that was kind of like the first link, I think, between new Doctor Who and classic Doctor Who.
And of course, Sarah Jane Adventures has continued that tradition.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that later. Do tweet us your comments in the YouTube chat room. We've got it live here. John seems to be sticking around for a bit longer, so he'll be in the chat room. But yes, we were going to kick off with... should we show a clip?
We're going to show a clip. I think
the promo for Saturday's episode of The Impossible Astronaut.
Okay then, and
that's the one.
Okay. Impossible Astronaut.
We're in the middle of the most powerful city in the most powerful country on Earth. Let's take it slow.
It's all right. I'm sending my best people.
Help me! My life in your hands.
Doctor Who, this Easter.
So there you go. That's a new episode. This Saturday.
It's looking very exciting.
well, do you know what my main concern with this new episode is? Amy Pond's in trousers. That's that's not necessarily a good thing.
Yes, indeed, sure. Well, we shall have to wait and see then, won't we?
Amy Pond's in trousers. River Song is back.
River Song is back.
Yeah,
and you've had some theories I've noticed on Twitter.
I think everybody has silly theories. The one thing I was thinking, Stephen Moffat loves to mess around with time travel.
Yes.
And nearly all, I think with the exception of Douglas Adams' story, The City of Death,
yes,
pretty much in all previous Doctor Who, the time travel aspect is just to get Doctor to the start of the story, has his adventure, and then he leaves at the end.
Sure.
But Stephen Moffat loves to actually bring, with stories like The Girl in the Fireplace and so forth, he loves to actually use time travel on a far more intense examination within the story itself. And the first time the Doctor meets River Song is the last time she meets him. And I don't know, I just always kind of like wonder, they're both redheads, a pond can grow into a river.
Well, this was one of the original theories, wasn't
it? Yes, that's one that's I think it's maybe a bit too obvious.
I think it's a bit stretching it a bit, yeah, because I'm sure that obviously when they created River Song, Amy Pond wasn't even, or wasn't even on the cards, because it was Russell T Davies's era, that was his show, and who knows how long he was going to be running it for.
Yeah.
No, but it's, it could be interesting. I mean,
so who do you think River Song is?
Oh, well, she's not a Time Lord. I know people really want her to be a Time Lord or the Rani or something.
But well, we already had, people are saying it could be Romana, but we already had that when David Tennant left. It was that mysterious lady.
Yes.
Was she Romana? Was she Susan Foreman? Or was she his mum?
Yeah.
Or was she the tea lady?
Well, there you are. Do you think Stephen Moffat is playing with time so much that River Song actually goes so far back in the Doctor's time that she gives birth to him?
Possible. Or perhaps the Doctor is actually his own dad.
Perhaps. Oh dear, let's not create paradoxes already.
Well. In fact, currently, David Tennant's father-in-law is Peter Davison.
Well, there you go. Yes, indeed.
There you have the Doctor as his own father-in-law.
Well, Barry Aldridge in the YouTube chat room is saying he reckons it's either the wife. It's the wife of the Doctor.
I could see River Song being the Doctor's wife when it was David Tennant. But with Matthew Smith, it's like...
It's a bit of a cougar.
It's a bit of a Mrs. Robinson thing going on there.
It's a young actor, but it's an old character. You just have to buy into it.
I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes along. But yeah, you've also... It's the first time... They filmed They did some preparatory filming for the Daleks in Manhattan.
Yeah.
But this is the first time they've properly shot in America. They've shot in Utah.
Indeed. Yes. We've had many.
Mark Sheppard.
Yeah.
A regular from Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
And Firefly and Chuck and Leverage and lots of other shows. He's the main guest star.
Indeed.
It's set in the 1960s.
1969, I believe.
1969.
Same year as part of Blink.
Oh right.
Is there a connection?
I doubt. I think it's more. I think it's more to connect with the moon landings and Nixon and things like that. So.
And we do have President Nixon in it.
President Nixon is going to be appearing in it. Yes, he has quite a role in it. I understand. But they've always enjoyed that, especially in the new series, is to bring have the Doctor interact with historical characters.
Well, it is, but obviously they've started now having him interact with quite powerful historical characters.
Well, Queen Victoria,
Victoria, and now President Nixon.
Madame Pompadour.
So, is the Doctor losing his mystery because of now almost too many people with power and knowledge?
Well, it's even a case of Winston Churchill has a phone line to the Doctor to call him when he needs a bit of help.
I mean, he was always this mysterious character. He could go in, go out. Only really units were involved with him. But now it seems that all this time he's been involved with some of the most powerful world leaders.
And when you actually look at some of the classic Doctor Who stories, especially the black and white ones, he would turn up and the alien races he was dealing with and the people, nobody knew who he was. They had this person turned up, they'd just think he was some buffoon.
Indeed.
Now the Doctor turns up and the Daleks are panicking already and the Cybermen know who's turning up.
And every person he meets gets to go inside the TARDIS.
Yeah.
Everyone knows about the TARDIS now. It's like it's now no longer really a secret. Surely the world of Twitter and the internet, it would be everywhere. And it's like, who is the Doctor? And it's perhaps
the Doctor is Amy Pond. The Doctor is River Song.
I think that's why I liked the Silurian story they did last year, because suddenly it brought it back to just a small, tiny village. Only a handful of people witness it.
Yeah,
it's a sort of story that
I was a bit disappointed though in missing the third eye. Though I missed that eye. That kind of like distracted me throughout. I was like, "Where's their third eye?"
How are you guys doing in the chat room over there? Yeah, is there any comments in the chat room you can read out?
We'll have to come back with that. We're just trying to get through YouTube.
Okay, I've got YouTube, so here it's all fine.
Yes, we're coming to you both from Ustream and
this
from
is our
YouTube.
First time. We couldn't get YouTube working on those video guys earlier, but it seems to be working for Talking Who, which is great. So we're very clear. So what's next on our agenda?
So right now we're also going to do, as well as discussing the new Doctor Who. We're also going to discuss classic Doctor Who in the form of the latest DVD releases. However, I've already seen my copy and hammered through the extras. You haven't got Plans to the Spiders yet, which is the latest.
My Planet of the Spiders only arrived yesterday, and I'm on Amazon Prime, so it's quite disappointing. But then it was like, then the news of Elisabeth Sladen was just like, oh my god, as I received.
That's going to be because I watched mine over the weekend, and when I heard about Elisabeth Sladen passing,
it's going to be very strange watching it this time.
And there's a lot. It's a 6-part story.
Yeah.
There's a whole chunk of extras. So what we thought we'd do this week is we'd talk about one of the latest other DVD releases, which is the Mara Tales,
which is now also available in North America and Australia, so everyone
and that's Snakedance and Kinda from season 20 19 and 20 of Doctor Who.
Yes, it was 2 seasons, that's right.
Yes. And in season 20, when they brought the Mara back, the idea was every single story had a returning villain.
Well, this is the interesting thing about the Peter Davison era, because there's definitely more of a sense of continuity.
Yeah.
They obviously planted this idea with the Kinda and Tegan, which would then continue into a following season. So let's have a look at the trailer anyway for Mara, which is Kinda and Snakedance together in a box tale, available from 2 Entertain, and here we have Mara Tale.
Mara inhabit the dark places of the inside.
Tegan, what's the matter? What happened?
Dark places of the inside. It's a dream.
The dream? What dream?
I can never remember.
I've had this dream, this particular dream before.
I am your strength. I am a Mara.
Put the light on! Put the light on! I have the power of life and death over all of you!
The Great Crystal is a source of the Mara's power.
Go away! Open the box. I don't think that would be very wise. Open it, or I'll have you shot!
Wherever the wheel turns, there is suffering, delusion, and death.
Through the Great Crystal, the Mara will reoccur as a physical fact here on Medusa.
What's happening? What's funny?
The Mara's waited a long time for this return. I think it plans to be spectacular.
So there you go, that's Mara Tales, the trailer for it. Snakedance and Kinda. Well, Kinda comes first.
Kinda comes first, yeah.
And generally, Kinda and Snakedance together are actually seen, along with Caves of Androzani, as the very best of all the Peter Davison stories.
I had actually quite low expectations.
You did?
I didn't see this the first time round. It was at a time that I was in boarding school, so I didn't actually get a chance to see a lot of Peter Davison, so I've only discovered really Peter Davison through VHS and through DVD, and these are ones I didn't have on VHS. So this was actually a first time for me on this one. And I did have actually low expectations, because not a lot of Peter Davison stuff, it is a bit roper. You think of Warriors of the Deep, and it's...
Well, I find Peter Davison is very, very 50-50. It's either really good or really bad. And
I enjoy him.
Yes.
And I enjoy actually the interaction of actually having more than one companion. But sometimes the stories are, they're a bit in the middle.
But I've got. So, what was your view of Kinda and Snakedance? Did you get a whole new appreciation of them?
I did. Kinda was. I was very surprised by it. I thought the character he starts going mad, as you see in that clip, and he's the one who's in control of this dome which they're all staying in. He's got the Doctor and Doctor Prisoner, and he plays it very unhinged, I have to say. And and for Doctor Who, when you're playing madness and being unhinged, it could be really cheesy.
Yeah.
But he does it quite straight, and it does a great job. And Adric, Adric gets a really bad rep, but actually, I don't mind him.
He actually kind of works. He kind of works in this story.
He does.
I felt. I think Adric. I think Matthew Warson isn't quite as strong an actor as some of the other people there.
Yeah.
So I think very often it would depend on whether he was given the right material to work with. I think he was one of those ones that when he was given good material, he could do a good job. And when he was given bad material, I don't think he could really rise above it.
What he does in Kinda, he is always working with the Doctor, but you always get a sense that somehow he's a bit of a loose cannon.
Yeah.
But, he's only a loose cannon in the way that he tries to do the right thing.
Well, it's through his naivety.
It's his own naivety.
Yeah.
He thinks he can fool the enemy all the time, so he can get on the inside, so he can try and help the Doctor, without the Doctor necessarily knowing that Adric is helping him. But the Doctor, he keeps him there. He has faith in him, obviously.
Yeah.
He's actually... I think he's one of those characters I think should be reassessed.
Well,
it's too easy to knock him.
And what did you think of Snakedance?
Snakedance, Martin Clunes.
Did you watch the DVD extras in which they're saying in the documentary this was Martin Clunes literally his first role on television?
I've watched the Kinda ones. I didn't watch the Snake.
It's very interesting. They're saying it's Martin Clunes' first literal role on television. And if you see in the credits, he's way down on the credits. You had bigger name actors appearing in it, and apparently all the other guest actors were furious because Martin Clunes was just chewing the scenery, and the director was giving him more and more to do because you could see how good he was in it.
He does a fabulous job.
Is that, considering he's basically now seen as a comedy actor, here as a Doctor Who villain, slightly pantomime but also still sinister, and I think he does a fantastic dramatic job, and it's actually a shame he was basically given a one-off bad guy character because I'd have loved to have seen him back on the show a bit more.
Oh no, absolutely, no. Well, maybe he can do it now. Enough time has passed. He looks like a different person. But yeah, it's a very young Martin Clunes, and he does a phenomenal job as the prince of this planet.
What I really liked about this story was I have a slight preference to Snakedance over Kinda, and I always felt the writing's great in Kinda.
Yeah.
But it's one of those writers, and he's his first time writing for Doctor Who, and he's obviously writing for something with a slightly bigger budget. So the alien planet, which is supposed to be this lush Eden type planet, it looks like a set, and when the snake turns up at the end, the model effects are terrible, but there's a fantastic CGI option on the DVD.
On the DVD, now that is really interesting because I did watch that option where you can have either the original or the CGI. Yeah, the CGI looks great, but you know what? It's not the same. I actually prefer the original.
But you have the great thing is you have. But anyway,
that option. It wasn't that bad. Where actually I think they could have improved it is the scenes where they're actually the Mara is just an ordinary size snake.
Yeah.
They could have actually used a real snake at that point. There was no reason they had to use a rubber one. I mean, it's not that hard to handle.
Might have been health and safety rules in the 80s.
I'm sure they had less health and safety rules then than they do
on
now.
A Doctor Who budget as well. A rubber snake from Woolworths was a bit cheaper. But getting back to what I was saying, I felt that when it came to Snakedance, that the writer understood the constraints of a Doctor Who budget.
Yes, sure.
And suddenly...
Very limited sets.
Whether it's he understood the constraints or because of the success of Kinda, they spent a bit more of that season's budget on the story. But I just think that the scripts are great on both of them, but just from a technical point of view, Snakedance looks fantastic.
Yes,
the sets look great, the costumes look great. It's actually one of the better Doctor Who... If you want to show a friend who's not into Doctor Who, and you want to show them an episode... You show them Kinda, and whatever you might say, there's a cheesy snake at the end, and there's a bad set alien planet garden.
Yes.
Whereas on Snakedance, you could show somebody that, and even now I still think it holds up very, very well.
And also, I think both shows showcase Tegan really well as well.
Yes.
She doesn't have a huge part in Kinda, but she does have very key scenes in Kinda.
Well, her scene in Kinda, and you've got to go to the director of that episode, I believe it was Peter Grimwade, the direction of that when the dream sequence.
Yes.
When she enters the dream time and first encounters the Mara, and it's all shot in black and white using this harsh video effects that you couldn't really achieve now.
Yeah.
And it's a very nightmarish sequence. It's fantastic the way it's directed and everything. And so you've been through the extras on Kinda, but you haven't been through the Snakedance.
I haven't seen the Snakedance extras. No.
Well, it's typical. Very much the great thing about what To Entertain do with the Doctor Who DVDs is more than I don't think any other TV show on DVD has got such a full set of extras for every single story.
All those classic Doctor Who DVDs are just really worth buying because the DVD extras are always just phenomenal. I mean, they just do such a great job in commissioning really interesting documentaries. The very first box set, the beginning, with the very first 3 Doctor Who stories of all time. I mean, the documentary on how Doctor Who was first created is just worth the box set alone.
Well, actually, one of the most interesting documentaries I saw, was quite a recent one, was on the mutants.
Yes.
And it's a terrible Doctor Who, it's a terrible, terrible story. But the documentary on it, again, is worth the price of the DVD alone. And it's such an interesting one. It's tackling race in terms of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And how, whether it's through racial stereotypes or different ethnicity used in the casting on the show.
Yeah.
And very sensibly keeping it very firmly in keeping the time and the context of when it was made. But it's a wonderful snapshot of how racial attitudes have changed on the BBC and on British television over a 50-year period through the eyes of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And there's also the Roger Delgado documentary on Frontier in Space, the Space War. And that's brought a tear to my eye, that one.
That's a good box set as well, yeah.
I'm hoping that they'll do a documentary soon, a tribute to Liz Sladen.
Yeah, I think that has to happen, really, without a doubt. And fortunately, we've got lots of. She appears in a lot of documentaries anyway.
But it would be nice. I think it would be just nice to have a retrospective of her time on Doctor Who, and also have comments from the people who work with her.
Of course,
and
I
mean, Tom Baker's put a very, very touching tribute on his website today to her. And
we've got a question from a police box who's saying.
Hello, police box.
I want to know your first memories of Doctor Who.
My first memories, I started. My dad is a science fiction fanatic, and he read all science fiction books, comics, and was hugely into Star Trek and Doctor Who throughout the 60s. And my mother always jokes he only had me. So that when my mum would say to him, "What the hell are you watching that for?" He'd go, "I'm watching it because he wants to watch it."
No, absolutely, that's what all good dads should do.
So I was brought up on and I have little snapshots of memories. I ended up having to watch them again on DVD and video track. But I clearly remember watching John Pertwee stories as a kid.
Really?
And I have a few scattered memories which I can trace of the Sea Devils. I clearly remembered watching the Sea Devils episode, watching Death to the Daleks with the Daleks and the Exelons, and I very, very clearly remember as a kid the Regeneration from
fantastic.
Peter Davison to Tom Baker. And then Tom Baker, when everybody says who is their doctor, who's their doctor, for me Tom Baker very much became my doctor.
Yes.
And there was a period I actually couldn't watch the show. I was so, as a child, terrified, literally terrified of the Zygons. I could not watch it when there was Terror of the Zygons was on, or Pyramids of Mars. Those two stories I couldn't watch. Then I was able to watch the Doctor Who again until it was the Talons of Wang Chiang. And nothing in my life, when I was a 6-year-old boy, watching Mr. Sin gave me nightmares for years afterwards. I was just terrified by it.
Well, I will talk about my first memories later, actually, because actually it ties into the Elisabeth Sladen.
Right, yes.
What we're going to be discussing with her. But we have a note from Dr. Who Ellis, who has pointed out that there will be a 15-minute tribute on BBC after Doctor Who on Saturday. So bridging that gap between Doctor Who and Doctor Who Confidential will be a tribute to Elisabeth Sladen.
What I'm hoping is that they will put in the end credits like they did on Doctor Who the movie.
Yeah.
When John Pertwee passed away just before that started. I'm hoping at the end credits they will dedicate the episode to Liz.
I think they should. Really.
Maybe I could get blasted, but I actually saying that really only if it had been Tom Baker or Peter Davidson or David Tennant, I don't think anybody else's passing would have affected the fans to this extent. So I think dedicating that episode.
There was a reason why she was the most popular companion for most people, and people who were just discovering her. The classic stories on DVD who've only seen the Sarah Jane Adventures, and the recent Doctor Who, they're rediscovering her as well, and it's.
I always thought that was a great dynamic they had, in season 12 with her and the Doctor and Harry. And also, it was a shame they got rid of Ian Marter as Harry Sullivan, because I felt that was a really good dynamic between the three of them.
Let's go on to our tribute to Elisabeth Sladen. And we'll just, if you go into images, well, we've discussed earlier, of course, how we all found out, but she was introduced way back in John Pertwee, the third Doctor.
It was his final season. It was the story, The Time Warrior.
The Time Warrior, yeah.
They wanted to get a stronger, more women's lib kind of character onto the show. And actually, there's this great bit in The Time Warrior that I loved when Ian Gron was trying to interrogate him. She says to him, "Get lost," or something. This real strength you hadn't seen in a female Doctor Who character.
We've got a clip, which is the scene where Sarah Jane meets. And this is from The Time Warrior.
And your name? Smith. John Smith.
Oh, seems to be.
I'm sorry?
Well, I was talking to a young woman just now. Well,
yes. Smith.
Hello? Doctor, I'm intrigued. What's that for?
That? Oh, that contains my equipment, Professor.
Well, that's original.
You're the virologist, Miss Smith?
Yes. Who told you?
Well, I read your paper on the teleological response of the virus. A most impressive piece of work.
Thank you.
Particularly when I realized you must have written it when you were 5 years old.
Yes, that is rather difficult to explain, isn't it?
You're going to try, aren't you?
Well, my Aunt Lavinia is in America on a lecture tour, you see.
Mm-hmm.
She had an invitation to visit here. I took her place.
Why?
I thought all this might give me a good story. I'm a journalist, Sarah Jane Smith.
And your name? Smith.
So there you go, that was a clip from The Time Warrior.
Yes.
Her first scene.
And wow, she looks so young there. But actually, she didn't really change.
She looked the same. I think that's why it was
amazing.
such a shock to us all. When she did Sarah Jane Chronicles, she didn't really look any older.
And she had that really unique voice. And actually, it was David Tennant, I think, and when he got to work with her for the first time, he said, working with Elizabeth, just transported himself to his childhood just by hearing her voice. But yes, no, that was Time Warrior introduced us on Sontarans, of course.
Yes. But first Sontaran, that was Lynx.
Sontaran, yes. I really like that story. But until Planet of the Spiders came out this week, that season has been really lacking on the DVD front, hasn't it?
Well, they've got problems with Invasion of the Dinosaurs. One episode's in black and white, so they've got to colour it in. But we had Peladon Tales released last year, which had the Monster of Peladon on it, and the Time Warrior is now available. And but Death to the Daleks still has not been scheduled.
Yeah, I've got a picture of Death to the Daleks.
Yeah.
So there's she meets the Sontarans, she meets the Daleks in one season.
Yeah.
And then of course she gets to have the regeneration with Tom Baker.
Yep, Tom Baker comes in. Yep.
And then we have with Robot, of course, which we have right here, Robot. And then, like you were saying, we have this dynamic between her, Harry, and the Doctor.
I think that gives a really good dynamic to it all, because basically it means that the Doctor's always got they've always got somebody they can play off.
And what we have now with season 32, as opposed to season 6, people, season 32 is we've now got Rory as a full-time companion.
Well, we've also had that for a bit also with Mickey Smith.
Yeah, but
for a bit they kind of underused him.
They kind of underused him. They didn't. They kind of like. I don't know why there was such a hesitation to have him. He always had to sort of chicken out.
Yeah.
Of actually being being there in the TARDIS crew, but we've now got it proper now. We've got Amy and Rory. We have a 3-person crew in the TARDIS, and I think it's great. And throughout the 60s, that was the norm. you would have one guy, one girl, or actually there was two girls and a guy, and I think until
it wasn't really until John Pertwee with Joe Grant
that you had the single female
because they'd always actually had a male companion to do the action stuff. Like you had Jamie with Patrick Troughton, and you had Peter Purvis as Steven Tyler.
And I think also what you have, what they explained, I think, in one of the extras about Harry's character is that at the time they didn't know who John Pertwee was regenerating.
Yeah, what they thought they'd get is have an action character. So if they had a new Doctor who, say, cast as an older person and couldn't do the action scenes, you needed like a Jamie McCrimmon or a Stephen, somebody who could throw a punch and do the action stuff. But once they saw Tom Baker could handle the action scenes himself, they kind of, I think they just felt that Harry just became like this. But I like the idea you had this woman's liver who wants to be fiercely independent with this old school kind of guy who was always trying to help her out, and she was kind of like saying she could look after herself all the time.
We've got some comments in the chat room. Doctor Who Ellis says Sarah Jane was definitely different from any other companion. She can relate to normal people, and that's why I love her. Barry Aldridge, I actually watched The Time Warrior earlier today, and it was a very strong opening story for Elisabeth Sladen. Gina is tearing up at our discussion here. And John Renegade reckons they should bring out a combined Brigadier Sarah Jane box set.
No, that'd be an interesting thing to do. I mean, actually, it might be an idea for them to rush release. I mean, I'm sure they've got to get the extras ready and everything like that, but to get Terror of the Zygons out onto DVD, because that's a great Sarah Jane story, and it's was the last appearance for many years of the Brigadier.
It was,
so
indeed, yeah, absolutely.
It'd be a great way on that DVD. You could do a tribute to both of them.
Absolutely, yeah. Well,
and of course, the Brigadier appeared in the Sarah Jane Chronicles.
Indeed, yes. So, I mean, this season, the first season with Sarah Jane and Tom Baker as the Doctor, I mean, we had some of the best stuff there was.
Yeah, well, they brought in the Sontarans.
Came back.
Yes.
She meets the Daleks again.
Well, Genesis of the Daleks is seen as one of the greatest ever Doctor Who stories.
It is, and I think a lot of people will always cite that as their favourite Dalek story of all time. And then straight after Daleks, she meets the Cybermen, which was their return, because we hadn't had the Cybermen throughout John Pertwee's era.
It was actually one of their longest breaks for the Cybermen.
Yes,
so.
which we can't get now, because everyone has to be there every series. There has to be a Cyberman. There has to be a Dalek. You can't have these breaks anymore. But I think that's obviously must make them more special. The fact that they took like 4 or 5 years before the Cybermen were to come back.
Well, you say that, but in the black and white era, during William Hartnell's era and Patrick Troughton's era, the Daleks actually got 2 stories a season, right up until Terry Nation took the rights away. And the Cybermen were getting 2 stories a season as well, right up until the John Pertwee era, and then they just suddenly stopped using the Cybermen.
And of course,
but the great thing is you can introduce new monsters.
But this was also the first time the Cybermen in colour.
Yes.
As well. And actually, even for the Daleks, because I think even though John Pertwee's era was in colour, most people will still be watching it in black and white.
Yeah.
They still had black and white TVs. But here we are, the Cybermen in full colour. I mean, still silver outfits, so it's not much, But
bit of black on them.
Bit of black, and of course the Cybermats returned in that one as well.
Yes.
And they're coming back in this season 32. The Cybermats.
And I think we were discussing earlier before the show came on. We were discussing with each other about the fact that the Cybermen, throughout this, it's one of the longest periods they've had virtually no change. But apparently the Siberia Sea is being taken off them.
Out.
And I've seen some advanced photos from the new series, and what I noticed is the Cyber Leader, the design of the Cyber Leader. I don't know if you ever read Doctor Who Weekly, but it reminds me a lot of Cyber Leader Croton, in which they have this kind of like black pyramid on his face, which is something they did on this Cyber Leader or in Doctor Who Weekly. All the Cybermen actually had names.
They did, and actually then one of them actually became a good guy.
Yeah, that was Cyber Leader Croton. He discovered he had emotions, and he turns against his Cyberman Trovan, and he became a companion. Yes,
see, that would be great, wouldn't it? But you'd have to do it with a Mondus Cyberman. You couldn't do that.
This is Mondus or Telos.
Yes.
One of the Cybermen have lots of different home planets. Some come from Mondus, some come from Telos, and some come from a parallel Earth.
But you just couldn't really do that.
And there's one Cyberman I got from Forbidden Planet.
You couldn't do it with these Cybermen because the new ones, because they're just too big and blocky.
Yeah, well, you could just imagine him sort of like trying to help out the Daleks.
Exactly, yeah. So, yeah, I think they should bring them back to it, personally. I would love to see them.
I'd love to see another redesign on them. I mean, I thought the whole joy of the... I don't know why they redesigned the Daleks. I mean, what's your view on the new design of the Daleks?
I can understand it.
Oh, it's awful.
I can understand it. And I like the fact that they're larger. But...
And Dayglow.
Well, you know what? I watched those Peter Cushing movies, and I really loved the different colours of the Daleks.
It worked on this. Victory of the Daleks. I wept when I saw these ones.
I just think if they hadn't done the Hunchback, they would be fine.
Yeah,
it's the Hunchback that I think is a bit of a problem.
And plus the material, they look like bubble bath Daleks.
Well, hopefully they're just a bit more bulletproof. I don't know.
Yeah.
Gina thinks they should use names like Cyber Bob and Cyber Carol. Okay, so what we next? So then we have really the Gothic era, don't we?
Yes.
Pyramids of Mars.
Season 13 of Doctor Who is the Philip Hinchcliff era of Doctor Who. When you had Philip Hinchcliff producing the show, Bob Holmes, probably the show, and in my opinion, to this day, still the show's best writer, as script editor, and Tom Baker and Liz Sladen. I think that was a powerhouse. You had stories like that. You didn't have with the android invasion. That was a bit of a throwback to more classic.
Yes, the
type.
Sort of the little village in English Green story.
But
going back to the earlier question from, I think it was a police box or Doctor Who Bar. Doctor Who Bar, by the way, go to their website. They do classic story watching together on Twitter, and you can tweet about the story. Everyone puts on a DVD at the same time. It's a lot of fun. But going back to the earlier question where it's like, what was our earliest memories of Doctor Who? We go back to that previous picture.
Sure.
One of my earliest memories is me as a kid drawing monsters, and the monster I predominantly remember drawing was Morbius, the creature from the brain of Morbius, which again is a great performance from Elisabeth Sladen. She's blind for part of that story. It's always, she was a very sort of gutsy woman. There was always this, when there were sort of terror moments, she had this sort of tremor.
Well, apparently that was why she got the role. That was when Barry Letts auditioned her for the role. He said she could play strength, but she could also play fear and vulnerability. And it was the fact he said she could play all three together. That she could come across as being strong and defiant to a monster, while still there's a hint that she's scared at the same time, which is. And
I think some of these in this which ends up being her final full season. Is some of her best performances. And
ended with the Seeds of Doom.
Seeds of Doom, indeed. Yeah.
Against the Crinoid, a giant shrub.
Which again, that's a memory I have as a child of watching this one. The branches coming through the windows and Sarah Jane and the Doctor sort of cowering from this sort of almost squid-like monster. That's definitely one of my.
And actually, but when I look at this picture here, it kind of like the memory for me, the closeness of the relationship between the Doctor and the companion in this. So the two of them, you see they're holding hands there.
Yes.
But it's not in a romantic way. It's a very caring.
It needs to look after.
Yeah.
Looking after each other, really. And then, of course, in the following season, Hand of Fear, which is again a fantastic performance from Elisabeth because she's possessed
by Eldrad.
But she's dressed up as Andy Pandy.
There's a great line in it where somebody says we're looking for somebody in an Andy Pandy costume.
This is her final story, and she does a phenomenal job here. Eldrad must live from Generator.
Yeah, I think that's Eldrad must die. I got it quite the wrong way round there.
But it probably wasn't one of the greatest stories.
But her leaving moment was, and I think Tom Baker and Elisabeth Sladen actually wrote that her leaving moment themselves.
Yeah, and I think we have the clip of that as well.
Okay, so I'll just go to
cue that one up.
Cue the video, and we can.
And I think this is really probably one of the more emotional to this point, I think.
And I'll give your love to Harry and the Brigadier. Oh, and I can tell Professor Watson that you're all right.
We've landed, Sarah.
What?
We've landed.
Where?
South Croydon. Hillview Road, to be exact.
That's my home. Well, I'll be off then. Yeah.
Thanks.
Don't forget me.
Oh, Sarah. Don't you forget me.
Bye, Doctor.
Bye.
You know, travel does broaden the mind.
Yes. Till we meet again, Sarah.
We just got a note from John Renegade saying the Andy Pandy costume was bizarre. We did hear of a guy who actually recreated it and wore it once for a convention.
A guy? Yeah, good for him.
And of course, the Doctor says he'll see her again. And of course,
he does.
At that particular time, you just have no idea. The companions never come back at that point, do they?
But what I actually found interesting about that leaving was it was one of the few leavings which actually made sense to me. I mean, so many of the companions, they're off on these amazing journeys, they're being taken around the universe, and then they just want to go somewhere, which, when an actor's contract would expire, they would always, come up with the most flimsy reason as to why the companion would go. And I actually like this, that it wasn't the fact she wanted to leave the Doctor, didn't want to travel with him anymore. He couldn't take her to Gallifrey.
Yeah.
And then a year later he took Leela there.
Well,
so.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. And of course, he would see her again, wouldn't he?
Yes.
But not before the BBC tried to spin her off into her own series.
The K9 series.
K9 and Company, which is,
yes.
I guess, really it's the it's not really appropriate to go into whether Russell T Davies should have on the Sarah Jane Adventures created by Russell T Davies when Sarah Jane and K9 are not his creations and they already made a Sarah Jane Adventures with K9. So I suppose this K9 was like a parting gift before the Doctor regenerates into Peter Davison.
Yeah. And he gave a K9 to all his ladies. Leela got a K9 as well, and Romana got a K9.
I suppose he thought, well, actually, if I'm going to go, I better get rid of my last K9 I've got in storage. And of course, he only ever picked up one K9 originally
well, he had K9.
He had all these spare parts.
He had K9 who he gave to Leela, and then at the end of that story, he's got K9 Mark II in a box.
In a box there. But she does come back, and she does meet several Doctors.
Yes.
In the 5 Doctors.
She actually meets 3 Doctors, a guy in a white wig, and a waxwork model.
Yes. This is great. Yes. I mean, obviously Richard Herndon replacing William Hartnell.
Yeah.
But
was actually
an amazing performance.
If you get the special edition of the DVD of the 5 Doctors, it's actually quite touching. It's actually, when you watch the documentary, it actually shows the friendship there was between the two of them, because apparently when Tom Baker didn't turn up for the photo call and they had the waxwork dumbing off in there, the other Doctors
borrowed from Madame
Tussauds, the other Doctors, the other actors were making their thoughts about Tom quite well known, shall we say, and having a few jokes with the waxwork model. And in the documentary, Liz Sladen says that she actually got very upset by this and had to walk away for a period because she couldn't bear, people not speaking well of Tom. So, it just shows how close and how strong their friendship and their bond was during the show. But of course, that wasn't to be her only appearance, which some thought would be, but it wouldn't be.
Indeed. And School Reunion.
Yeah.
Which, we do have a clip of this one as well. I mean, I'm not a fan of stories with Rose in it.
Oh.
But she's not in this final scene from School Reunion. which is really, I think, one of the best scenes in the New Who.
We've got this clip here.
It's daft, but I haven't ever thanked you for that time. And like I said, I wouldn't have missed it for the world.
Something to tell the grandkids?
I think it'd be someone else's grandkids now.
Right, yes. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to ask. You haven't... There hasn't been anyone, you know...
Well, there was this one guy. I travelled with him for a while, but he was a tough act to follow. Goodbye, Doctor.
Oh, it's not goodbye.
You say it, please, this time. Say it.
Goodbye. My Sarah Jane.
With a brand new model.
Affirmative.
Yeah. It does that.
So, do you think...
That, when I watched that for the first time when it was broadcast, I mean, God, that really hit me. You know, it was... You know, if you'd just loved Sarah Jane all those years, and suddenly just to see her back, I mean, it was fantastic, wasn't it?
So,
I mean, it was just a joy.
So, but do you think that was... he repaired K9 Mark III, or was that a K9
this is
Mark IV?
No, he says he's a brand new model.
So
somehow he must have some sort of memory chip that he can just insert into any K9, and it just has all the memories of the previous ones. But that's K9 Mark IV though, which of course continues now to the Sarah Jane Adventures, not to be confused with a terrible Australian TV series called K9.
I haven't actually seen that.
Which, oh my word,
they do have John Leeson voicing K9.
Well, they had to have something, but you know, the BBC are not involved in making it, so that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah,
you know. It's a shame, you know, it's not real K9, you know, they can try and pretend it is, but it isn't. But no, School Reunion is a fabulous episode, really, from that New Who David Tennant era. Probably one of the best ones. And that scene, it had a tear in my eye when I watched it the first time, and still just get a lump in my throat every time. And it's, you know, it just reminds you how much you just love Sarah Jane and the Doctor dynamic. And
she was very much seen as very much a part of the whole of Matt Smith's era. Suddenly,
once she was there, that floodgate opened, and
because you can see there she is with.
She came back.
She was there, and what in his pretty much Russell T Davies' final story before they did the whole.
She was in two big cliffhangers, wasn't it? The Stolen Earth two-parter, and of course the End of Time two-parter.
Yeah.
And of course, in between all that, she has her own series, which Russell T Davies claims to have created, but it's a character, two characters not of his creation.
And it has some more characters are not of his creation turning up on the show. We had the Brigadier turn up.
And of course, the Brigadier turns up in this one. And you know what? It's a shame the Brigadier never got his swan song in Doctor Who, but at least he got it in a Doctor Who related story. The Brigadier comes back. They sort of tie in a bit more, you know, the world that UNIT is around, of course. And it's really one of those stories that really means something, I think, to those who are long-term fans, but probably just goes straight over the head of the young kids who don't even know who the Brigadier is.
Well, it wasn't just on Sarah Jane Adventures. You got Matthew Smith on there, and there's Joe Grant.
So, how many Doctors has she met? How many incarnations? It makes 6, maybe?
I'm just trying to think, because you've got John Pertwee, Tom Baker,
yes,
David Tennant and Matthew Smith she interacts with and works with.
Yeah.
But you then could even push it forward to say that she meets the first and the second Doctor and the fifth Doctor, because she was in the 5 Doctors as well. So you could say 4, or you could even technically say 7.
Well, there you go. Yeah, because I mean, I presume she was, well, I suppose that they wiped their memories, didn't they? After the 5 Doctors.
I don't remember that.
And they get returned to their timeline.
All right.
I can't remember. Can anyone clarify?
There's anybody in the message, but I don't remember them having their memories wiped. I'm pretty much sure that they remember that all. So it's very funny that when Liz Sladen first sees John Pertwee in that story, and she goes, "Oh, what happened to you? You're not the Doctor." And he goes, "Oh, what do you mean? I became all teeth and curls." And the fans were all up in outrage because how would the 3rd Doctor know what the 4th Doctor is going to look like? And Terence Dicks, the writer, said that originally that line was supposed to be Sarah Jane's line, and John Pertwee went, "Oh no, that line's too good. I'm saying that myself."
But of course, he has he's all teeth and curls himself.
Yes.
Perhaps he's just referring to himself because obviously his did look slightly different.
Well, in Tom Baker's first story, that same writer, Terence Dicks, deliberately put a line in there about the Doctor saying his nose is an improvement, because John Pertwee would always claim about the camera angles making his nose look big.
Well, see, I really think that they should bring Sean Pertwee, give him a prosthetic nose, put him in a wig, and make him play his dad as a 3rd Doctor.
He's already been on the show
for a 2-Doctor story. I mean, it would be amazing, wouldn't it? I mean, he could do it, but he's not as tall as his father.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Okay, well, I think...
Well, that's our tribute.
We're pretty much running out of time now at this point. But that's...
Doctor Who Bar are just saying that they're running a tweet screening tomorrow night at 7:30. So go to doctorwhobar.com and check in on them.
Okay, now, this is just like a test program.
This was our test one, really, yes.
Next week, we're going to be getting out proper.